Rich Lowry joins me. He's the editor of National Review. He is, in fact, the host of the Editor's Podcast, which you should subscribe and like, and the McCarthy Report. I listen to both the Editors and the McCarthy Report whenever they come out. Rich, good morning. I'm sorry to have to talk to you under these conditions. I cannot even believe it. I heard the clip. Right, you were talking to Megyn Kelly, and I said, "Well, that's he was misspeaking there," and corrected the word migrant. What is going on with Indiana State University and the Badger Institute?
I don't know. The Badger Institute, conservative think tank out there in Wisconsin, canceled me without explanation when this controversy hit. And Indiana State claims that I'm a security threat. They won't be able to provide the security for me if I show up there in a couple of weeks. And this just goes, Hugh, just how pernicious. This isn't news, but just how pernicious cancel culture is. It's the accusation that's enough, right? The fact that you're being accused of something is enough for some people to assume you're guilty or you're too controversial to have in polite company. I clearly didn't say the word. A lot of center left people said I haven't said the word. A lot of progressives don't like me said I didn't say the word. So if they just taken a moment to investigate, they could have been made aware of this. But apparently they didn't want to. And I'm a big boy. I have friends like you. I have a secure job in a conservative media organization. What's disturbing about this? If I'm an ordinary this guy out there says this in a Zoom meeting, at my bank that I work at or something, they destroy my livelihood, and no one would ever hear about it. That's what's so pernicious, and why so many ordinary people are scared about this phenomenon.
I thought it was over. I thought canceling was over. That America had spoken. The backdrop. Rich is a much in demand guest. If people remember after the debate, I wanted Rich and Andy to join me, and they did because I think they're two of the best. And as conservatives go, I like to rank conservatives as PG, PG-13, R, and NC-17. Now, in the PG category, there's me, there's Rich, there's Guy Benson and Mary Catherine Ham. In the PG-13, I kind of put Ben Shapiro and maybe occasionally Andy McCarthy, mostly because he's a Mets fan. In the R, I'll put the commentary podcast because J Pod will occasionally let fly with something that you just got to have an R rating on. And the NC-17, I don't know. Matt Walsh was going to join me pretty soon. I don't know if Matt Walsh is in there, but you're PG with me, Rich, right? You've been around for a long time. You're 10 years younger than I am, but you've been around for a long time. You've never had controversy around you. You wrote a book on Lincoln, Lincoln Unbound, one of the very best books on Lincoln. How can they possibly think you would use the N word?
Smear me and to serve their purposes, and they had some success, right? At least two cancellations, might be a couple more coming. I have some college speaking dates set up. Wouldn't surprise me if those go away, but they don't care about the truth. The truth didn't matter. They just wanted to make the accusation because still, like you, Hugh, I was a little surprised. It's not 2020 anymore, but apparently this stuff still works. So criticize me for things I say. I say things people don't like all the time. The way you do, we each of us produce thousands of words. You produce more than I do on an average week, but there are a lot of them. Criticize us for that. Don't just fabricate something. It's so McCarthyite.
Well, it is McCarthyite. And I do want to point out what Rich just said. He and I do thousands of words a week, and we've been doing it, in my case, since 1990. I don't know when Rich's writing career began. He's written 4 books, and I've written a lot of books. And we're on record. Nobody is surprised when Rich Lowry says a conservative thing or I say a conservative thing. If he actually threw around the N word, I mean, people would be shocked and appalled and assume he was ill and maybe had a stroke. But you didn't do it. So I'm just curious, what Indiana State, first of all, shame on the governor who ought to be on the phone to them. Shame on whoever runs Indiana State University. This is a Board of Trustees matter. They got real problems on their hand on the campuses of America. They don't need to add canceling center-right or traditionally conservative authors and thinkers. What did Indiana State tell you when they canceled you?
They didn't tell me anything directly. This came through my speakers bureau, but it was the police assessed that it was a security risk and they couldn't provide the security, so they're canceling the event. And they used the word cancellation in part of their statement when they just should have said, we realize there's this controversy. Mr. Lowry denies it. We encourage students to come ask him about it if they're interested. And I'd be happy to talk about it. I didn't do anything wrong, not the least bit defensive about it. And, if it comes to that, have a sheriff's deputy in the side of the room. But the idea, they're going to be bomb threats or the lecture hall be stormed because I was going to show up is absurd. It's an obvious pretextual excuse. I'm with you. The governor appoints the boards of these institutions. He should have something to say about them.
Matt Walsh has this new book out, Am I Racist? A new movie, Am I Racist? And I want to get him on because I can't see it anywhere near me because it's not in a theater. It's in 1,500 theaters, but it's across the country. And Matt Walsh is controversial, and he might get a cut. The only people who will get threatened on a campus or upset are Jews. You're not a Jew. I'm not a Jew. So we can go onto any campus in America. Let me do business first. Which is your speakers bureau? Because I really want campuses and paying groups to book Rich Lowry as blowback against Indiana State University, and I cannot believe the Badger Institute, a conservative think tank, canceled you. But which speakers bureau do you use, Rich?
American Public Speaking. I might be slightly messing up the title there, but that's the sense of it.
All right. So how many of these events do you do a year?
I don't know the total. I had when there's an election season, people are more interested in hearing having me come and hear my commentary on the election. So yeah, I have a lot before November. And some of them are conservative institutions, or a Robbie George style institution at a college. But some are the colleges themselves, and obviously they're the most susceptible to this sort of BS.
Now, Rich, you are 10 years younger than me, so you have to keep working. Maybe a dozen years younger than me. So you've got to work. You've got to keep going. I basically stopped doing speeches. I'm tired of it. I do this show. I do occasionally Brett Baer. I'll do Martha McCullum today. Do you want to, have you noticed over the years that it's become more contentious? Because I haven't. I have not. No, I just did an event with Heidi Heidkamp. 1,000 people. It's not more contentious. That's in the minds of DEI bureaucrats. It is not dangerous or contentious unless you're a Jew.
Yeah, I've had the same experience. I went down to UVA a year or two ago, and this in itself is shocking. For an event with Chip Roy to defend Thomas Jefferson, and you think at the University of Virginia, Thomas Jefferson doesn't need defending, but that's the way it is these days. And they thought this event was also a security risk. So they had, the police reaching out to us and coming up with a plan how we'd get into the hall, and it was fine, right? It was a nice crowd. There were some critical, hostile questions. That's fine. We're a free society. We can deal with that. So my experience has been the same as yours.
All right. Do you agree with my my rating of conservatives? P, I don't know any. PG, you, me, Guy, Mary Catherine. PG 13. Ben Shapiro, McCarthy, Andy McCarthy, RJ Pod. If I had to do NC 17, I don't know that we have any conservatives who are NC 17. But what do you think? Are you a PG guy?
I never thought of myself that way. But yeah, in the sense that, I'm not being deliberately provocative. I'll say controversial things and make arguments people don't like. But the point of it isn't to provoke, it's to persuade. Some people might look at what I do, especially folks on the left, differently, but that's the aim. Now there's a place for provocation, right? And we have folks on our side who are very, very good at it and advance the ball for us by doing it. But that's not my natural. That doesn't come natural to me, right? I want to persuade people with good arguments. So
well, you're the heir to Buckley. You're the heir to William F.
Bill,
Buckley, who lost his temper like twice. In all of his storied career, he lost his temper twice.
Yeah, like once in public, and it was remembered forever. I mean, it was quite the incident. The debate with Gore Vidal. Now, Buckley would probably, if you're doing these ratings, he'd be a combination. A little PG, a little R, maybe R earlier in his career, and fading a little bit into PG. He could do both. So I'm not saying that there's not a role for provocation. There is, especially in our times, but it's usually not what I'm doing.
Yeah, you and I are not provocateurs because we're trying to persuade people. By the way, I have a substantive question to ask you. You wrote the book on Lincoln that introduced me to Lincoln's tariff policy, because nobody writes about Lincoln's tariff policy except Rich Lowry. Would Lincoln approve of Donald Trump's tariff policy or tariff rhetoric? He doesn't have a policy per se. And by the way, it's not China, because we will throw tariffs on China for national security purposes. What about Lincoln and tariffs and Trump and tariffs?
Well, Lincoln, I assume, would be more favorable than a lot of free market economists are, because this was a key aspect of his economic policy. But it was a different time. Trade was less important. We didn't have, federal income tax and all these other ways of generating revenue. So I can't say where he would come down on it. But the idea of it itself would not be outrageous to him. And this is, a thread throughout American history, that this tendency in economic policy going through some of our greatest figures, Alexander Hamilton, Abraham Lincoln, the idea that we needed to build up our own industry if we're going to be a world power. So it wouldn't hurt Lincoln's ears the way it does some folks, free market folks on the right.
I did that just to display how quickly Richard can move among these things. Rich Lowry is really adept at talking. I personally am anti-tariff unless it's for national security reasons, as is, I suspect, Rich. Rich, let's close by talking about whether or not people are rallying to you, because you did not say the N-word. Anyone who heard the Megyn Kelly podcast knows that, but it's been alleged. Are people rallying to your side online and on air?
Yeah. So first of all, folks on the right, even people don't like me on the right. We have some divisions on the right. When this first happened, defended me. I'm extremely grateful. I'll note Breitbart. We've had disagreements with Breitbart. They were right there. I've been meaning to reach out to Alex Marlow to thank them. People on the center left said no, this is BS, and even some progressives, their initial tweets, they went back and revised them or deleted them. And then I was going to let the thing go. You hope it's just a tempest in a teapot on Twitter, but it spread out, and had real world consequences. So I felt I had to write about it, and I wrote this piece yesterday. And the response to that has been extremely heartening. I've gotten at least a little trouble keeping up with my email. At least 3 invitations, various places, going to your point, Hugh. And I got friends like you, and I really appreciate it.
Well, I hope the Badger Institute in particular, their board of directors calls up their executive director and says, reverse your reversal, because we are a think tank. We think, we don't emote. Rich Lowry, thanks for joining me. Follow him on the Editor's Podcast. I'm Hugh Hewitt.